So, welcome again, and as we always do, let us start with taking these vows and refreshing them for us because we forget. So, one by one, if we have the capacity, it's nice to just go through these vows.
Yeah, can I start?
Yeah, sure.
May I be a guard for those who need protection, a guide for those on the path, a boat, a raft, a bridge for those who wish to cross the flood. May I be a lamp in the darkness, a resting place for the weary, a healing medicine for all who are sick, a vase of plenty, a tree of miracles, and for the boundless multitudes of living beings. May I bring sustenance and awakening, enduring like the earth and sky, until all beings are freed from sorrow and all are awakened. Thank you.
Thank you. So, I don't know who is iPhone. Do you want to unmute and read out the vows? Would you like to do that? iPhone. Okay, so I'm assuming that maybe you don't have the capacity to unmute. So that's okay. I'll read it out for myself. May I be a guard for those who need protection, a guide for those on the path, a boat, a raft, a bridge for those who wish to cross the flood. May I be a lamp in the darkness, a resting place for the weary, a healing medicine for all who are sick, a vase of plenty, a tree of miracles, and for the boundless multitudes of living beings. May I bring sustenance and awakening, enduring like the earth and sky, until all beings are freed from sorrow and all are awakened. So we are on verse 18 today of the verses on training the mind. I'm just going to pull them up, and I think we can maybe directly start with the verse description. So this all we have touched upon. Today we have to take up this one. The supreme inspiration is enemies, hindrances, disease, and suffering. So I'm just going to share with us the teaching by Jetsunma Tenzin Palmo on this verse. So we'll listen to it, the teaching, and then we can maybe open up for reflections if there are any. Yes.
The supreme inspiration, let's see what inspiration is in Tibetan. Kulma. Okay, the supreme inspiration is enemies, hindrances, disease, and suffering. So normally we regard things like enemies, people who are mean to us and not nice and hurt us and cheat us and boss us around, and hindrances, obstacles, difficulties, disease, sickness, suffering in general, as being an obstacle to our practice. We think that if we are surrounded by beautiful Dharma friends and we are in good health and everything is beautiful around us, then we can practice. When we go back and are faced with difficult people and noise and all the problems of our modern civilization, and we get sick, and there are so many difficulties, I can't practice. And so it's very, very important, and this was one of the main teachings of Cho Atisha, to recognize that difficulties and obstacles, sickness and enemies and so forth, far from being the obstacle to our practice, are the opportunities for our practice. It's a very, very important point. If we go to a gymnasium or we go to practice yoga, we start off with pretty flabby muscles. And the way to strengthen our muscles, strengthen our bodies, become strong, is either by, getting on those machines in the gym and pedaling away, or by doing sustained yoga asanas, which will strengthen the body and challenge the body. If the posture is too easy, then we will not progress. So slowly we welcome more and more difficult asanas in order to make the body stronger and stronger, more subtle and supple and flexible. I mean, it's very nice to lie out on the beach, but if one spends the whole time here just lying out on the beach, one is not going to get a strong body. One gets a strong body by attending yoga classes and doing asanas. And likewise, in life, if everything goes easily and pleasantly, and one is only surrounded by people who are kind and loving and do and say exactly what we want them to do and say, that is very pleasant. But we don't learn much. It's very easy to be loving towards people who are lovable. The question is, are we loving towards people who are obnoxious? This is the question. So instead of resenting people, for example, who create problems for us and are difficult for us, and seeing them, as it says here, as the enemy, well, at least as somebody who is, opposing us, instead of projecting out a negative feeling towards that person, we can see this person as our guru, our teacher of patience, our teacher of forbearance. Now, patience, as you will remember, is one of the qualities needed for enlightenment. How are we going to learn to be patient and forbearing if we never have anybody who opposes us? So therefore, when somebody is difficult, instead of thinking, oh, this is too difficult, this person is really an obstacle for my peace of mind, we can be grateful to them because they are helping us to develop this quality which is very important in the world and which without them we would not be able to develop. Do you understand? So this turns the whole thing around. One time when I was in India, I was in Kerala, I think. And my friend wanted to meet this famous astrologer. So I went along. And so while he was there with all his books, I thought, well, let's ask. So I said, okay, I have a choice here. Either I can go back into retreat. This was just after I left retreat. I said, either I can go back into retreat or I can start a nunnery. What shall I do? So he looked it all up. And then he said, well, if you go into retreat, very peaceful, very happy, very conducive. If you start a nunnery, many problems, many challenges, many difficulties. But both are good, so you decide. So, of course, I thought, okay, back into retreat. Coward. But I met with this Catholic priest, and I told him, and he said, well, of course you start the nunnery. He said, we are like pieces of rough wood. And if we always stroke ourselves with silk and velvet, that is very nice, but we don't become smooth. In order to become smooth, we need sandpaper. So, when we meet with difficult people, when we meet with difficult circumstances, that is our sandpaper for making us smooth. And so, rather than resenting this, we should be grateful. What can I learn from this? If we are sick, instead of lying there feeling sorry for ourselves, we can practice what is called Tonglen, which is this meditation where with the ingoing breath, we visualize bringing in all the sickness and suffering and karmic causes of the sickness and suffering from the other people, and then breathing out well-being and light and love and so forth. This is a very profound meditation. I'm not explaining it, but we make use of our suffering. Many Tibetans, during the communist takeover and the Cultural Revolution, many lamas were imprisoned, of course. And they had not done anything wrong, but they happened to be lamas in a position in the monastery, so they were imprisoned and put in labor camps. And many of them, because they still had loyalty to His Holiness and to the Buddha Dhamma Sangha and refused to pretend otherwise, went through many years of torture and interrogation. And eventually, after 20, 25, 30 years, they were released. And if one met them, it was very interesting. I've met several of them. And instead of, being broken, sometimes physically they were in bad shape, but you look in their eyes and they're just glowing with love and compassion. And one of them, who was daily interrogated and humiliated and tortured for many, many years, he said how grateful he felt to his torturers for helping him to develop great compassion. And you looked at him and he meant it. He said, I learned all about compassion when I was in the monastery. I had no idea. I would never have understood, except for my tormentors, my jailers. They really helped me on the path. I'm so grateful to them. And I really hope that they themselves will attain enlightenment. So this is of course, most of us are not going to end up in prison being tortured. But what we're talking about is that even the most awful things can be taken on the path, can be used skillfully. That the things which we learn about and intellectualize about become a reality when we are faced with real challenges. Then we know how we're doing, because it's very easy to be lovely and smiling and namasteing everybody in such a beautiful environment where everybody is friendly. I mean, here at the ashram, people look at each other. They greet each other. Even complete strangers will greet each other. They have friendly heart. So it's easy to be friendly with friendly people. And this is beautiful. I mean, I'm not putting it down. I'm not saying that therefore everybody should learn to be mean. It's wonderful, and it's a refuge for people, to remind us that the world actually is full of beautiful people. Despite what we read in newspapers and on the news, actually, the world is mostly full of people who are good people trying. And it's beautiful, but we don't learn anything from that, not much. I mean, yes, we learn to be friendly to friendly people, but the real challenge is to be friendly to unfriendly people. I mean, personally, my own this quality of taking difficulties and enemies, sickness, all the challenges of life onto the path, making that the path, is what Lojong means, this word Lojong, mind training. And for me personally, my Lojong practice is the foreign registration office of the police in Dharamshala, where we have to go to tell them we're leaving, coming back, renew our visas and things like this, and you've got all these guys there. I mean, it's a good Lojong practice, because also one can feel compassion, because they're endlessly dealing with frantic foreigners, begging them, for extensions of their visas and getting all uptight and upset, and they have to deal with this day by day by day. I don't think they deal with it skillfully, but they definitely, it's not a job that anyone would envy. And the minute you go into the office, you can feel it. That tension there. And these poor guys, we just have to go in and then go out, and they have to live there all day long. So this quality of taking all the difficulties that we meet in our life and using that as the opportunity to develop ourselves is a very, very important one. In Buddhist cosmology, the highest realms are the various 26 levels of God realms, from very sensuous realms to extremely mind-only realms, and all stages in between. But their one characteristic is that they are pleasurable. They are the result of good karma, and so you have body of light, anything you want, it just spontaneously appears. Everything is delightful. It appears that one's life goes on forever. It doesn't, of course. When the good karma is finished, then we come down. But at the time when they're up there, they think it's all very wonderful. And everything is love and light. But it is regarded as essentially a spiritual dead end, because one isn't learning anything. There's no need. Everything's lovely. There's no incentive. There's no inspiration to transform the mind, because everything is so pleasurable, endlessly, it seems. On the other hand, on the other extreme, the very lower realms, which are a projection of a very distorted mind, are unremitting suffering. And so one is so caught up in one's paranoia that one cannot think outside of oneself and has no energy left over to try to develop spiritually. And therefore the human realm is considered the ideal realm for spiritual progress, because we have this balance of pleasure and pain. The pleasure helps us, keep going. It's, we need also as animals to have pleasure. But the pain, the difficulties, the challenges in life are what help us to develop spiritually. Most people, when they get to a certain age, recognize that actually where they really developed was during times of great difficulty. At the time it was very painful, but if we go through that, then looking back, we can see that actually this was very helpful for us. We learned a lot from that. And so therefore, it's very important to recognize that the difficulties of life, the challenges of life, our losses, our sickness, antagonisms that we meet from others and so forth, are calling us to practice. How can we deal with this situation skillfully? What can I learn from this? How can I use this on the path? So for this reason, it's called an inspiration. It's a kulma. Kulma means, kulma you could like use, it's a bit like a whip or a stick to exhort a horse to go forward, to put more effort into it. If you give them a smack and they go forward more, that's a kulma. It's like an incentive to practice. So we shouldn't want that always life should be just pleasurable and everything should go the way I want it to go. And when things don't go the way I want them to go, therefore that's wrong. That's just the ego speaking. In fact, we often learn far more from our difficulties and problems and challenges than we do when everything goes exactly the way the ego had planned things to be. So this is a very important point, because it means that everything that happens to us, we use it as the path. Nothing needs to be discarded. From everything we can learn. I mean, I think one of our problems is that nowadays, especially, the idea is that a good life is a life which is full of comfort. And as many problems as we can avoid and just keep everything going nice and smoothly, that's a good life. But to my mind, if all we want is to be comfortable, well-fed, looked after and loved, we should pray to come back as a pet dog. I mean, look at Mumu. She's loved, she's fed, she doesn't have to work, she has no problems. I mean, if that's all we want from life, but is that what we're here for? Aren't we here to learn, to develop, to transform? In which case, we have to take everything onto the path and use it. Nothing is discarded. One Lama said to me one time, very traditional Lama, I was complaining about this and that and the other, and he said to me, if you say obstacle, it's an obstacle. If you say opportunity, it's an opportunity. And this is true. There is nothing which happens to us that we cannot learn from. The Supreme
So I think pretty self-explanatory teaching and quite comprehensive. Anything anyone wants to share? Yes.
आपका मैं ये कह रही थी कि जैसे कि इसमें है कि भाई प्रॉब्लम्स आती है, ऑब्स्टेकल्स आते हैं, इसको एज ए अपॉर्चुनिटी लेना चाहिए। ठीक है, लेकिन जब प्रॉब्लम्स आती है तो हमारा सारा ध्यान तो उस टाइम पूरी प्रॉब्लम में लग जाता है। चलो, उससे तो हम उभरने की कोशिश करते हैं,
हाँ जी, हाँ
लेकिन
जी।
फिर ये होता है कि जो चीज अब हमें लगता है जो शांति से हम जब सब चीज ठीक रहती है, उस टाइम जो हम भगवान के जितने नजदीक या भगवान का नाम ले पाते हैं, वो जब प्रॉब्लम्स आती है तब सब चीज हट जाती है कि ये सब हटाओ, पहले प्रॉब्लम को सॉल्व करना है। तो उसको एज अ अपॉर्चुनिटी कैसे ले कि सब चीज वो करते हुए क्या।
तो आपका एक्सपीरियंस ये कहता है कि जब आपकी लाइफ में प्रॉब्लम्स आई हैं,
हाँ,
आपका जो ध्यान है वो
हाँ।
भगवान से हट गया है, ये कहना चाह रहे हो? उस दौरान जब प्रॉब्लम चल रही थी, या
नहीं, अब
ज्यादा,
जैसे
उस समय ज्यादा लगता है भगवान पे ध्यान या कम लगता है?
ध्यान तो लगता है, जैसे शांति में हो तो आदमी बुक पढ़ लेता है और ये
हम्म,
सब इस तरह से शांति से याद करता है। और उस टाइम रहता है कि हाँ भाई, हमारी भगवान को प्रेयर करते हैं कि भाई ये प्रॉब्लम हमारी सॉल्व हो जाए।
बिल्कुल
इस तरह
बिल्कुल,
से
लेकिन भगवान के साथ रहते तो ज्यादा उस समय है ना।
हाँ, हाँ, हर टाइम भगवान को प्रेयर करते रहते हैं। हाँ।
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल, तो ये बात उसी तरफ, उसी डायरेक्शन में बात लेके जा रहे थे कि जब देखो, जब जीवन में सब कुछ ठीक ठीक चल रहा है, तो
हम्म,
आप एक आध बुक पढ़ लोगे, अच्छा लगेगा आपको, स्क्रिप्चर जैसे भगवत गीता पढ़ ली, कुछ पढ़
हम्म,
लिया, है ना? तो हमें लगेगा कि अरे हम तो भगवान के करीब ही हैं, बुक बुक पढ़ तो रहे हैं।
हाँ, हाँ, हाँ,
लेकिन
अशांत मन से।
हाँ हाँ, तो होता क्या है कि जब एक्चुअली में प्रॉब्लम आती है, क्योंकि उस समय हम बड़ा हेल्पलेस फील करते हैं,
हाँ, बिल्कुल।
उस समय वो बुकिश जो नॉलेज है वो हमारे एक्चुअली किसी काम आती ही नहीं है।
आती नहीं है, हाँ, बिल्कुल।
काफी बार
हाँ,
ऐसा होता है कि ऐसी दुविधा है कि इतनी ज्यादा परेशानी है दिमाग में और दिमाग सुलझा नहीं पा रहा है उसको,
हाँ।
तो ऐसे समय में हमारे पास और कोई चारा जब नहीं बचता,
हम्म,
तब हमारा जो भगवान के साथ कनेक्शन बनता है, बुक पढ़ने की बात नहीं कर रही मैं, जो
हम्म,
कनेक्शन बनता है, वो वाला कनेक्शन जो डे टू डे ठीक ठीक चल रहा होता है, वो कनेक्शन वैसा तब नहीं बनता।
हम्म, हम्म, अच्छा। हाँ, नहीं, ये तो बात है, इंटेंसिटी तो तेज हो जाती है।
इंटेंसिटी, हाँ इंटेंसिटी।
हम्म,
अब
हम्म,
देखो ना, वो जो रहीम जी ने बोला है, कि रहीम जी ने बोला हुआ है कि मुझे दुख ही दुख देना, क्योंकि उनको दिखता है साफ साफ कि जब दुख आता है तो मैं कितना ज्यादा कनेक्टेड रहता हूँ भगवान के साथ,
हम्म,
ना? और जब सुख आता है, सुख मतलब ये जो ठीक ठीक चल रहा है सब,
ठीक ठीक चल रहा है। हाँ,
है ना, तो उसमें बंदा ढीला रह जाता है, उसमें भगवान को हम इंटेंसिटी से याद नहीं करते, उसमें अपना हम रिचुअल तो कर लेंगे, पूजा वूजा पाठ वाठ कर लेंगे,
हाँ, हाँ, हाँ,
लेकिन
हाँ, हाँ।
इंटेंसिटी से याद नहीं करते।
हाँ, ये बात तो है। फिर तो हर मिनट लगता है कि इसी मिनट ये प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व हो, ठीक हो।
तो एक्चुअली
और
में क्योंकि हम इतने इनर्शिया में आ जाते हैं, तमस में आ जाते हैं ना, तो ऐसा
हम्म,
ऐसा कहा गया है कि ये जो पेन या सफरिंग, ये कोई चैलेंजेस हैं, इनकी तभी तक जरूरत है सिर्फ जब तक हम इनर्शिया में हैं, तमस में हैं।
हम्म, हम्म,
ये तामसिक जीवन होता है हमारा, जो मोस्टली हम जीते हैं ना, वो एक
हम्म,
तामसिक जीवन होता है, अपने वही पुराने पैटर्न्स में, जो
हम्म,
मॉर्निंग रिचुअल, इवनिंग
हाँ,
रिचुअल वो
हाँ,
कर रहे हैं, जो लोग घर में गेस्ट आ रहे हैं उनसे मिल रहे हैं, तो ये बड़ा तामसिक जीवन जीते हैं हम।
हाँ, रेगुलर लाइफ।
बिल्कुल। तो सात्विक कैरेक्टर हमारा तब डेवलप होता है जब हमको लगता है कि अरे मैंने इतना पढ़ा हुआ है, इतना समझा हुआ है, पूजा पाठ किया हुआ है, मैं क्यों नहीं इस सिचुएशन से बाहर निकल पा रही।
हम्म, हम्म,
तब जो हम जिस इंटेंसिटी से भगवान के साथ कनेक्शन, अपने आप को ओपन करते हैं भगवान की तरफ,
हम्म,
तो वही फायदा है मनुष्य जीवन का।
अच्छा।
तब उस सेंस में ये कह रही थी कि अच्छा है कि डिफिकल्टी आए, क्योंकि वही आपको बता रही है कि एक्चुअली में मनुष्य जीवन का पर्पस क्या है, आए क्यों।
हम्म,
क्योंकि अगर दर्द नहीं आएगा तो उतना कनेक्शन भी नहीं बनेगा जितना बनता है दर्द में,
सही, सही, सही।
है ना? अभी
हाँ।
अभी मेरे को एकदम से लगे कि मेरा कोई सबसे प्यारा दोस्त या प्यारा कुछ कुछ फैमिली का
हम्म,
बंदा
हम्म।
उसकी जान पे अगर बना है अभी,
हाँ
सोचो आप
बिल्कुल।
लोग, मेरा सारा का सारा सब कुछ धरा रह जाएगा और
हाँ
मेरा ध्यान बस ये होगा कि बस ये किसी तरीके से ठीक हो जाए,
सही बात
है ना। तो वो जो इन गैदरिंग होती है कि आपने, जैसे वो मांझा होता है ना पतंग का,
हाँ हाँ।
वो हम ऐसा, हमारा जो दिमाग है वो ऐसा रहता है कि वो जगह जगह हमने मंजा छोड़ा हुआ है,
हम्म
हर डायरेक्शन में,
सही
थोड़ा पास्ट में, थोड़ा फ्यूचर में, थोड़ा अभी की बातों में। लेकिन
सही बात
जब
है।
कोई दर्द आता है तो हमारा वो सारा मंजा घर आ जाता है, इकट्ठा हो जाता है।
सही।
तो वो होना बहुत जरूरी है, क्योंकि उसके बिना हमारे अंदर तपस्या डेवलप नहीं होती, तप नहीं डेवलप होता,
अच्छा। क्यों?
है ना। तो अब वही जो ये बता रही थी कि जो मनुष्य जीवन है वो है ही प्रोग्रेस के लिए,
हाँ
और अगर सब ठीक चलता रहेगा तो कोई प्रोग्रेस करने की सोचेगा भी नहीं,
हाँ सही बात है।
है
हाँ
ना।
सोचेगा ही नहीं।
हाँ, उस सेंस में शी वाज सेइंग कि बिना सफरिंग, बिना डिजीज के हमको जब तक सिर पे पड़ती नहीं है तब तक
हाँ।
हमको, हाँ, अच्छे से कनेक्शन नहीं बनता हमारा, नहीं तो माइंड स्कैटर्ड ही रहता है हमेशा।
और एक जो ये था, उन्होंने कहा कि एनिमीज का जो है कि उसका कंपैशन और वो, अच्छा ये जो एंड्योरेंस क्या जो उन्होंने बात की कि सहन
जी
शक्ति की बात है।
जी जी।
अच्छा, अगर आप ये भी देखा है कि हाँ भाई आप सहते रहो तो दूसरा आदमी और ज्यादा उग्र हो जाता है कि वो अपनी उसकी, तो उसके बारे में आप क्या कहेंगे फिर क्या?
नहीं, एक्चुअली इस चीज को इस सेंस में नहीं लेना चाहिए कि आपको ये कहा जा रहा है कि अगर कोई आपके ऊपर अब्यूज कर रहा है तो आप
हम्म।
अब्यूज को सह रहे हैं, उस सेंस में नहीं
अच्छा
लिया जा सकता इसको,
अच्छा।
क्योंकि इसमें थोड़ी हमें समझ भी यूज करनी है। जैसे अब कृष्ण जी हैं,
हाँ जी।
कृष्ण जी कुरुक्षेत्र में हैं अर्जुन के साथ,
हम्म
वो ये भी तो कह सकते थे अरे ठीक है, 5 गांव नहीं मिल रहे तो नहीं मिल रहे, मतलब क्या है, फिर
हम्म
कुछ और कर ले।
सही सही।
लेकिन उसने बोला कि नहीं, ये अधर्म है,
हम्म।
और अधर्म जहां पे है वहां पे आपको धर्म का साथ देना, यही आपका कर्तव्य है।
हम्म।
तो जहां पे अधर्म हो रहा है
हम्म
वहां पे अधर्म सहते रहना, एक्चुअली में मैं भी अधर्म ही कर रही हूँ अगर मैं अधर्म को सह रही हूँ।
अच्छा।
तो ये उस
तो
सेंस में
वहां
हमको
से
नहीं लेना चाहिए,
ठीक
ये
है
उस
कि
सेंस में है कि इन जनरल अगर हम वी आर लिविंग विद, सी फॉर एग्जांपल दीज तिब्बतन मंक्स,
हाँ।
जो जिनकी ये बात कर रही थी, देवर केप्ट इन प्रिजन,
अच्छा।
कि अब अगर आप प्रिजन में हो, आपको पता है कि आप यहाँ से अभी नहीं निकल सकते,
हम्म।
तो आपको क्या करना है, आपको यू हैव टू अडेप्ट एंड यू हैव टू फाइंड अ वे सो दैट यू हैव योर ओन पीस, आपको अपने दिल की शांति है, और घृणा भाव नहीं है, क्योंकि वो आपको भी नुकसान दे रहा है, वो दूसरों को भी नुकसान दे रहा है।
अच्छा।
तो
सही
उस
सही।
सेंस में वो बता रही थी कि जो मंक्स वहां जेल में रहे और उनके
हम्म।
ऊपर उत्पीड़न हुआ, है ना, क्योंकि उनको
हाँ हाँ
पता है वो वहां से निकल नहीं सकते, तो उन्होंने ये बोलने की बजाय कि हाय मेरे साथ क्या हो रहा है, मेरे साथ क्या हो रहा है, कब बंद होगा, उसको अपनी साधना का जरिया बना लिया।
हम्म।
तो
सही सही।
ये हम किसी भी स्टेट में कर सकते हैं कि हम किसी भी सिचुएशन को हम अपनी साधना का जरिया बना लें। लेकिन इसका
हम्म।
मतलब हमको उस तरीके से नहीं लेना चाहिए कि अगर कोई अब्यूज कर रहा है, अधर्म कर रहा है, तो उसको हम सहते रहें।
अच्छा।
हाँ, फिर ऐसे तो फिर कृष्ण कभी बोलेंगे नहीं ना कि तलवार उठा और दुर्योधन से
हाँ
लड़।
वही सही बात है। ये मेरा ही आईपैड का आ रहा था क्या?
हाँ, आप ही थे, मैं आप ही को बोल रही थी कि अगर आपको बुद्धिस्ट वो जो वोज हम पढ़ते हैं, अगर
अच्छा।
आपको
हाँ
पढ़ने
हाँ
हैं
हाँ, एक तो मैं अभी जस्ट मैंने आपका स्टार्ट किया, आज फर्स्ट क्लास है मेरी।
अच्छा अच्छा अच्छा।
अच्छा, मैं वैसे बोल तो रही हूँ, मोबाइल से ही मैंने ऑन किया हुआ, पता नहीं तो
आपका
मैंने
नाम जो
कम।
दिखा रहा है वो उस पे आईफोन लिखा हुआ है।
अच्छा। ओके।
वैसे आपका नाम
हाँ
क्या है?
शशि शर्मा।
शशि जी, ओके ओके।
हाँ अभी जस्ट, अच्छा उसमें आईफोन दिखा रहा ना,
आईफोन दिखा रहा है।
आईपैड मैंने सुना, तो मैं कहा मैं तो आईफोन यूज कर रही हूँ, तो इसलिए मैंने आपको जवाब दिया, मैं सोचा और
कोई
कोई
बात
भी।
नहीं, कोई बात
हाँ
नहीं, हाँ हाँ।
हाँ। थैंक यू।
ठीक है, थैंक यू सो
हाँ।
मच। सो आई थिंक वी कैन ऑल्सो एंड हेयर, एक छोटा सेशन भी कर सकते हैं आज, आई डोंट हैव टू स्ट्रेच इट टू 1 hour लॉन्ग, जस्ट लाइक अवर यूजुअल सेशंस। सो इफ नॉट एनीथिंग, अगर अगर इफ एनीवन वांट्स टू शेयर एनीथिंग, अगर कुछ है तो शेयर कर सकते हैं, अदरवाइज वी कैन एंड द सेशन टुडे आफ्टर शेयरिंग द मेरिट। सो अभी ये लास्ट के हमारे 2-3 वर्सेस बचे हैं. आई थिंक विल टेक देम इन द नेक्स्ट सेशन एंड मे बी then end with these verses and maybe take up something else, something new after a break. So okay, maybe taking a moment and sharing all the merit from these discussions and reflections to all the people, all the sentient beings. May all beings be well and happy. And may we all progress towards a greater and a greater light. So thank you Shashiji for joining today. And thank you Taru.